Good day and welcome to this edition of the Parent Portal podcast. This podcast is presented by the Student Remediation Center as a platform to provide parents with tips and recommendations for navigating through the child's life experiences. I am Mrs. Lewis, Principal at SRC Private Primary, and today I am joined by Alicia Halls of ALEMACSS Associates, as well as special guest learner Ocean Felix. Today's discussion is centered around effective study skills as we consider great approaches to effective study time and benchmarking learning. Now, as we jump in, we want to start off with a quick little discussion about the brain. So we're getting just a smidgen technical with you parents today. Now, one of the things we want you to be mindful of is that when we think about the brain and learning, at a basic level, we're considering that the brain has four major lobes. We have our occipital lobe that is responsible for vision, our temporal lobe that is responsible for hearing, our parietal lobe that is responsible for sensory experiences, and our frontal lobe for higher level thinking, analytical thinking. Now, why do you need to know this? Well, whether you are a parent or an educator or even an adult learner, it's important to understand details relative to the four major lobes, because when you're learning, you want to be mindful to activate these lobes of the brain so that you can create strong memory connections. Now, when we think about the occipital lobe as being responsible for vision, we then recognizing then that in respect to learning, you can learn by sight. You learn by seeing, whether you're reading, whether it's a graphic, a billboard, a picture, we're learning through sight. And some people are strong visual learners. And if you discover that is you, or as a parent, you discover, hey, when I show my child a picture, he or she remembers it better than when I say it to him or her, then that means your child is a strong visual learner. If you're recognizing that your child is a strong visual learner, it means it would make study time, homework time, learning time so much easier if you then remember to incorporate visuals into the learning experience. Same thing for when we consider the temporal lobe. Temporal lobe reminds us that we learn through hearing. We receive information from our external environment as we hear, as we listen. For learners who are learners learning best by hearing, it means explanations are great. Talking it out is great. Now, of course, what the parietal lobe does, it allows us to have what we call concrete learning experiences where we're able to touch and engage. We usually call the persons who respond to this well kinesthetic learners. They like to get up and they like to do and they like hands-on experiences. So again, I'm hoping that even as I give these references, it's triggering something in your minds to say, oh, my child really does this, or my child really does that, And of course, as mentioned, we have the frontal lobe, responsible for higher order thinking skills. Because of course, when we think about our ministry curriculum, we think about the updated SEA assessment criteria 2019 to 23, there's so much analytical skills, reasoning, critical thinking that is required. That critical thinking takes place in the frontal lobes. Now, I can imagine as a parent, you might be thinking, oh, well, if my child likes hands-on, better do everything hands-on. Well, no, not really. Because what we are encouraging you to recognize is that strong memory connections are made when we activate all four major lobes of the brain. Whether it's a strong response or a weak response, what we want to do is activate. Neuroscience tells us that through stimulus, we can activate the lobes of the brain. So what we're encouraging you as parents, even as we think about approaches to effective study time, is to recognize, hey, when my child is studying, let me pay attention to how he or she responds best. And if we're recognizing that my child is a visual learner, then I don't only do pictures, but I am sure to include pictures. But of course, as I use the pictures or the graphics, because I want to activate all the major lobes of the brain, then what you're going to do is you're going to have the picture, but you will speak and give an explanation. You could demonstrate. You can, let's say we're talking fractions. You could have the pizza if you go out. Now, the fact that you're working with the pizza means that is already tapping into the parietal lobe. It's a sensory experience. It's smelling good, I'm feeling good, I'm liking it, and I want to eat it. But no, you can't eat it yet because you have to tell me, if I take one slice out, what fraction of the pizza remains? Do you see how easy it is to make mealtime or any time in the home or even when we go out a meaningful learning experience? And guess what? Because you made it fun, moms and dads, the child has a higher possibility of that they would remember what they learned, remember the formula, remember how to think about it, and we're activating and using the brain instead of just saying, do this, do that. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you get it correct? No. In the home, when we think about approaches to effective study time, we're thinking about approaches that incorporates your child's dominant learning style, but also including approaches that activates other learning styles, activates the other lobes of the brain, so that we create, as I said, strong memory connections, and we create positive learning experiences. Ms. Halls, what thoughts would you have to share in relation to these approaches to effective study times and experiences?
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. One of the things that I often hear parents complain about is that, I am sure he or she knows it, and I don't know how come at the exam he performed so poorly. Parents need to be mindful that, as Ms. Lewis would have explained, the different learning styles. And if you are mindful of those learning styles, you will always try to remember to create relatable experiences where children will have triggers in the exam room. Because what happens is that once we focus on only one learning style, when the child goes into the exam room, they become lost. We must always remember the way in which our curriculum is delivered. We are still a chalk and board society. There's a lot of writing that takes place, and if we look at the SCA exam, each child is tested similar. There's no differences because this child is a visual learner. We don't put him in a separate room and give him that visual experience as opposed to the sensory learner. We don't do that. Each child has to shade, they have to write an essay, they have to do the math, they have to do the English. So each child is examined on an equal basis. So with that in mind, parents, you have to be mindful of, okay, so my child learns this way, I'm going to give him that experience. But I must also be mindful that I have to allow him the opportunity to apply that experience to the classroom, apply that experience to the exam that he or she is preparing for. Because if he's not able to apply that, he might have a wealth of knowledge, but be unable to apply it when exam time comes around. So we must remember, we need to create triggers. We need to create triggers, we need to create experiences where the children can relate what they are visualizing, what they're seeing, or that whole fraction experience to, okay, so when you sit down in the exam room, remember we had that experience where we shared the pizza and we cut it in 8 slices, and we had, so you have that conversation. So it's transferred to the exam room, and it becomes easier for the child to relate to, okay, yes, I remember this, I can do this. And they would be able to work it out based on the fact that they had already had the experience some time ago. Ms. Lewis?
Now, of course, we have our guest learner, a young adult learner, Ocean. And my question for you, Ocean, as a young adult learner, so you're not in the primary level, you're not at the secondary level, but of course you recognize there may be persons listening who are not parents, but they may be in their late teens, early 20s, and they want to be able to understand how it applies to them. As you consider what we've been sharing about, learning styles and what works best for you, as a young adult, how does this apply to you in your studies?
As a young adult learner, for me it would be before I would always revise, but I would never put in time to it. I would always, whenever I feel like doing it, when I'm distracted, I wouldn't be able to study again. But now, whenever I'm studying, I would first revise the topic that I'm focusing on, then do past paper questions on them. Then I would give my subject teachers a to correct, and from their follow-up, I would know what I know now and what I need to understand better, and how better approaches for me to do the questions and overall be able to prep myself for exams.
I think what I'm hearing Ocean talking about there stems beyond, having just a daily routine for getting work done, but even within the study time, that one way he is sharing that can be effective in how we approach study time is by having a plan for how we get things done. So for example, I hear you sharing, you identify what you're going to learn, then you get into your text resources and so on. You get into the past papers or the past examination to try your knowledge, and you check in with your teacher or an answer sheet, whatever, to make sure that what you think you have learned, you've effectively learned. And that sort of a routine is helpful for a learner at any level. The difference is parents, if we're dealing with a younger child, he or she may not necessarily be responsible for that process. You might be responsible for that process. So let's say, for example, your child is studying in school and they're learning a topic in science. Then don't just say, yeah, go and revise your work, because remember, it's a child and children need guidance. So then what you want to be mindful of is to say, okay, what topic? Or check in the book, see what topic did the teacher do? Look at the note in the child's book. Is the note in the child's book written legibly enough that the student can read what they've written? Does it have correct spelling inside of there? Because think about it. If the child wrote the note, especially if you're working with a standard 1, standard 2, standard 3, sometimes they have not yet been fully disciplined in copying the note correctly, this kind of thing. We have to be realistic here. Is it spelled correctly? Is it a complete note? Are you seeing where the teacher signed off? So once you make sure you have a good note, a proper note, then you can say, okay, honey, this is what you're going to learn. By the end of your revision time, this is how I'm going to pick you up in the work. And you say, this is the amount of time I'm going to give you. So because you create a routine, even for that 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or whatever time frame you put to it, it makes learning even more effective, because now instead of the child becoming despondent, like, oh my gosh, I just have to sit and read this, and there's no end game to it, what you're doing is creating a path, so we know it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The child knows what they're working with, it gives them structure, and they're able to stay on course, as opposed to if you simply say, go and revise, and they did their version of it because they've not been guided, and then as parents we become annoyed. Ms. Halls, what thoughts do you have, if any, to share on this?
I like how you started off at standard 1, because it is so important to start early. A lot of parents wait until, well, let me admit that one of the things that our society does well is cram. So a lot of parents wait until last minute. Again, I refer to the SCA because I'm heavily involved in primary school. A lot of parents wait until the last term before SCA to cram 7 years of schoolwork. Now, unless your child has some sort of special ability, oftentimes we find it difficult for the child to start retaining what they have learned in standard 3 or standard 2. So I need parents to be mindful of starting as early as possible and being mindful, as Ms. Lewis would have explained the different styles. Again, tap into the fact that know your child. Know your child, okay, my child probably cannot study as an individual and need to study in a group. You probably need as a parent to go out there and sort out a few friends where you can sit and do group study. Some children study for long periods of time. They can go for 2 hours, 3 hours, and then some again have to go for 30 minutes and pause and take a break and come again and do another 30 minutes and come again. Some can only do 20 minutes at a time. So you have to be mindful of these things. Be mindful of the fact that, here what, I am preparing for something. I need to start as early as possible. We also need to be mindful of the space in which these activities is taking place. Is it that home is just not conducive to studying? As Ms. Lewis said, you may need to sort out the library facilities or other facilities that your child can go to get some space where they can sit and be quiet and study. We need to be mindful of what is needed to assist our children have these effective study routine and give them the experience. And don't wait until a month before exam to try to get them to focus and sit down and be complaining when they are not. And they are getting frustrated because here they have to complete a lot of work that has been done over the few years. So we need to be mindful of the fact that, here what, let me start early, let me understand their study style, and let me try to understand the exam that they're going to write and put things in place so that they will be able to feel comfortable on that exam day. Revision is not a one-night thing. It accumulates over a period of time, and there must be ways that you can test or evaluate how effective is the studying, how effective is revision sessions. Are they accomplishing or are they learning anything from the sessions? These are questions that we need to ask ourselves.
Yes, because benchmarking is very important. When determining the effectiveness of study time, it can't be done based on emotions or assumptions. There needs to be some sort of guideline that we're going to use. So if we're talking about studying at home and parents supporting their children through study time, we're looking at, can you tell me the definition? Can you tell me the complete definition? Can you explain all of the terms that are on the list? Are you able to answer the question and give me back the answer that I saw in the textbook? There needs to be some sort of a benchmark for the study time. And of course, even as we consider older learners, because of course we have a young adult learner with us, your parents at this stage is not with you necessarily picking you up in your work. So then you have to have some sort of reference to be able to determine if I have been reading for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, is this effective learning time? So Ocean, when you consider your own study schedule, do you benchmark? Do you have a benchmark? Do you have a way of knowing, is my study time effective? And if yes, how do you know whether or not your study time is effective?
For me, knowing if my study times are effective or not would again be doing past papers then allowing my teacher or teachers to correct them. And according to how my grades look, I would then know if I am, again, excelling in a specific subject I'm doing or not. And another method I discovered in effective study time would be when you are revising your definitions, you should always try to relate them to real life situations. Because what I've noticed in exams now is that they don't always bring questions based specifically on however you've studied your definitions. They will always talk about, for example, the photosynthesis cycle. They wouldn't sometimes ask you what is it, like, what is the photosynthesis cycle about, more like they may give you a plant diagram and then ask you to explain step by step the process and how it's done, and also include equations as well. So again, another effective way for you to study in your times would be revising your definitions and then relating them to real life situations.
Thank you, Sean. As you talk about the real life situations, I always encourage parents to create those experiences. But one of the things we need to be mindful of is consistency. Because we might do something today with regards to studies, and then 3 days after we have to go to the beach, we have to go and visit grandma, we have to go down by the movies, we have to go by the mall, and then on the 5th day, we can't remember where we left off. And Ms. Lewis talked about benchmarking and asking yourself questions, asking yourself if you can explain definitions. You must have consistency. If it is that you started at point A, you must know the journey after point A would be point B, and then on to point C. The objective is to get the definition of photosynthesis, and at the end of point D, I must be able to stand up and give me the definition, or I must be able to write a paragraph. If that is not done, well, we would not have achieved any form of milestone, and we may need to revise as to how we are going about this. We need to go back to the drawing board and get a new plan. There must be some level of consistency. There are 7 days in a week. If it is done, we're going to set aside 4 days at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, or some children wake up early in the morning. I don't know why, but they are morning children, I guess, and that is the period where they can sit down and go over, because that may be the quietest time in the house. So that is the time they may be able to sit down and go over their tables or go over a sentence, so come up with definitions and be able to write a paragraph or write an essay or revise a terminology. Utilize this time and be consistent with it. Don't start today and stop tomorrow and start 3 weeks after, and then at the end of it, exam time comes around and we all sad because we did not get the results that we wanted to. So be mindful of consistency and benchmarking.
So even as we look to close this edition of the podcast, we remind parents to keep in mind that when you think of effective study skills, the ultimate goal is to get to a place where students are able to recall what they have learned, they're able to apply meaning and show that they understand what it means, and they're able to use the information in new scenarios, whether in the exam rooms or whether in discussion in your evening time study routine. So once again, thank you for joining us for the Parent Portal podcast, having this evening joining is Ms Halls, the lead consultant at ALEMACSS Associates. We thank her so much for joining with us, and we thank Ocean Felix, a young adult learner, of course, en route to preparing for studying pharmacology. We appreciate him making time to share his learning and study time experiences with us. This is Ms. Lewis from the SRC Private Primary signing out this edition of the Parent Portal podcast.